The short answer is because of Blizzard storytelling. The longer answer demands us to take a quick look at this new cinematic from 9.2.
Sylvanas' soul has been fractured from the moment of her death until now.
Basically, Sylvanas, the genocidal lapdog of handsome Squidward, has been reunited with the other side of her soul, making her whole for the first time since Arthas poked her collarbone. I assume this is the scar from Frostmourne. Very, very neat. Perhaps a bit too neat, but who am I to judge? I'm a goddamn YouTuber. But now, she's in a kind of coma until she accepts what half of her did while the two halves were on a break. So what's wrong with this? Why does she have the public purchasing pitchforks and lighting torches in frustration? Well, I can only speak from what I've witnessed and what I think about her trajectory into the warm embrace of Thanos at home, but one issue definitely is that PTR data miners are less overworked than she is in the cinematic universe, despite being a relatively questionable character to most. While surely making a bit more logical sense in writings, her in-game decisions are so poorly explained that most have no clue what the hell she's doing since BFA and beyond. Even now, after a year of SL, I can only guess that she wanted to break the cycle of life and death to avoid torment, but I don't see how she could have ever pictured a positive outcome when trusting the Sanctum of Domination dude to do it. I get that she's a conflicted character and she was manipulated while desperate for a solution, but you need to be very convinced that you're not just working for a domination-seeking death god before you burn the innocent. But maybe it's worth it to purchase some Jailer Covenant armor with the anima from all those children. So that's one factor for the hate mob, but it gets worse. As mentioned earlier, with Shadowlands, we've learned that her soul was fragmented the whole time. And I mean the whole time, ever since Warcraft 3. And for clarity, I'm assuming that just having your soul fragments and split causes some weakness in the person. I don't think that's too far-fetched to believe. And why is this bad then? Well, for basically 2 decades, she was this vengeful spirit tormented by what Arthas had forced her to do while bound to his will, avenging her unfortunate fate by finally killing him in wrath, freeing herself from him once and for all. Seeking final peace, she let herself die and saw just how dreadful her afterlife would be. She had instant regret and was saved by one of Arthas' Valkyr. Now, her mission was to avoid death. Relatable. But then she became more and more villainous, even dooming others to her own fate, knowing how not fun that is. And you know you're bad when Garrosh put fellow Horde members on spikes, Hellscream calls you a bitch in the...
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
way. And then there's of course Teldrassil and much more. But now that we, out of nowhere, know she wasn't her full self, doesn't that undermine every choice she has made when we thought she was actually just becoming more desperate for control over her existence? Even if it isn't a case of a good and evil side, her entire purpose, her character, was to gain freedom, first from Arthas, then from death, and now from the jailer. And even if this moment is kinda silly, it does make sense that she, half a soul and desperately death evading, would get to this point. But that doesn't make it good writing, because now in retrospect, to me, it's like they pressed the pause button on Sylvanas as a character, then developed this broken half for 15 years without any hint of it, like an alternate reality Sylvanas, then suddenly plops the old Ranger General back in and practically nulls the character she had become. From our point of view, she went from an honorable general trying to save her people to a banshee puppet doing the opposite, which led into her becoming a revenge-motivated victim, and then later into a self-conserving deviant, into a full-blown mustache-twirling, two-steps-ahead villain, into yet another evil puppet, manipulated by an even more full-blown nipple-twirling baddie, and now into another... what is she now? Half monster, half victim? But something that might come up in the comments under this video is, she's a morally grey character, Kakio, that's just how they are. Morally grey characters are fine, they can be the best you can get. Take a recent video game IP example of Silco from Arcane, not a good guy, but certainly not evil either, but it only works if they make decisions based on their character's motivations, values, and weaknesses. What they've done with Sylvanas is take away the full character and weaken the internal conflict at the time of the decisions. Just retrospectively stripped her of, say, one half of her conscience. So now her destructive past was created by, like, half a person. I've never been a huge fan of her, but at least her goals for escaping the damnation she saw briefly in death made sense with a lot of her choices, making her do the awful shit that made Garrosh pull out the B word. But with this revelation, the weight of those choices become much lighter given that she was at her worst self. Not because of the hardship she had experienced, but because part of her soul was literally separated from her. And all this happens in an expansion where we get a glimpse of Garrosh, still unapologetically as self-serving as ever. An actually good Grey character, not mind-controlled or separated from who he wholeheartedly is. So, it does make sense that she was more susceptible to BDSM man's manipulation, but the character we've come to know over the last 2 decades is now heavily compromised. It's like she's been drunk driving through her decisions, and it just dilutes her into a capable chess piece ripe for Mr. Domination to control. But regardless, I can't speak for what Sylvanas will be going forward. I'm glad that it seems like the rest of the WoW leader lineup won't let her pull a Grommash and have them all celebrate together like no bridges or trees were burned when she inevitably fires that last arrow to pull us back to Azeroth. And so, with my poorly informed shit-take dumping session concluded, I'll leave you with this.
So long as her soul remains divided, she cannot wake.
Maybe she shouldn't